Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. I am, of course, Master Paul, joined by Tag the Gray, otherwise known as Baron Norman Tag, and we are finally here doing something on the channel that I've wanted to do really since around the time of the beginning. So you guys know, of course, we used to be called the Star Wars guys in our channel, used to be just talking about Star Wars news and rumors and, of course, the different shows. But also that we branched out after that, deciding we wanted to talk about everything. I have wanted to talk about Lord of the Rings and just Tolkien in general since pretty much we made the decision to branch out just from Star Wars. And I've really only done it once before now, but that was, of course, to talk about the bastardization that was Rings of Power. So I feel like it's high time that we talk about some actual good Tolkien. And I want to say hello right away to Matt Cave, who says, amazing timing. I just showed Fellowship to my son. How did he love it? I'm curious. Did he like it? Did he not like it? Did he get it? How did your son take it? So tonight, of course, this is going to be like a multi-part thing that we're doing. I want to talk about, by the time this is all said and done, I want to talk about, of course, all three of the Lord of the Rings movies, the extended editions, and all three of the Hobbit movies, the extended edition. And we're going to go in the order that they released. So tonight is going to be Fellowship of the Ring. But before we even get into that, I want to go over how we learned about the world of Middle-earth just as a whole. And Baron, I'll let you kick this off. How did you first learn about Middle-earth, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and just Tolkien in general?
Well, being that Tolkien was always around since I was born, grew up with people who had read the books and such. And of course, The Hobbit itself was required reading in school. So, of course, I read that. And then later on, I did follow up and read the three books as it went along. One of the other things was what's it, 1977, 76, 77, Rankin Bass animated film that was done for television. The Hobbit.
I know which one you're talking about. I've seen that.
Yep, with Bilbo Baggins played by Bean. I hate when I have mental block in the first name, but Orson Bean, and
okay,
many great others. Richard Boone, who played Paladin, was Smaug the dragon, and they had some pretty big hitters coming in for playing the voices on that. And for a television, roughly 2-hour movie, they did a very fair job. I thought it has held up for being what it is.
I agree.
And with the time constraints that they had. But let's face it, the Hobbit was not as densely packed as the Lord of the Rings books themselves.
No.
I never, in fact, to be honest with you, I still have not seen the Ralph Bakshi animated film all the way through.
Okay. Real quick, I want to
part one.
I want to break in here because we've got another guest coming in, and this guy has not made an appearance on the channel in a long time. He popped in on a random Skyrim stream once, and then before that, we were talking about lightsabers. But I want to go ahead and bring this guy in. He goes by many different names, including Stash Rendar, but today we know him as X-Wing. What's up, man?
What's up, guys? How's it going?
We're doing well. You haven't missed much. We're just talking about how we first heard about the world of Middle-earth as a whole. And Baron, I believe you were finishing up your story.
Yeah, exactly that. I of course I knew a girl growing up. She was big into the Lord of the Rings and even the Silmarillion, which was the posthumous work that Christopher Tolkien finished up with. And when she gave me her copies of her well-read book, she made sure she ripped out the lectionary that was in back, because she said the people in the school would constantly use the wording and phrasing of Tolkien around the school, so she didn't want to be left out, you might say.
Oh, I see. She wanted to be hip to the lingo.
Oh yeah, well yeah. The last thing you want to do is have people saying something you don't know about. They might be talking about you. And
Okay.
but of course, Ralph Bakshi's was the first real attempt to try to do it. The Beatles actually wanted to do a version of the Lord of the Rings back in the '60s with
What?
John Lennon was John Lennon wanted to play Gollum. Yeah, I know that.
No.
Somehow
But-
that both works but doesn't work.
Yeah, I'd never
Yeah.
heard that before.
Yep, and it never happened. Of course, never happened. But of course, Bakshi's was going to be a 2-part film. He basically the one we got, the first part was over. You might say they went over budget quite a bit over time. It's not completed if you take a look at it.
Mhm.
A lot of the animation is really herky jerky. Because it's not a finished product, and they refused him to do a second film, which Rankin Bass did with The Return of the King, which was a television movie, also. So basically, everything kind of lay dormant until 2001, or actually until the news before that happened. The news happening before the release of the film. So
Okay. Well, for me, I'll go ahead and say it. This movie, specifically the theatrical version, was my first exposure to Tolkien. Of course, Dad, I don't know how much Mom knew about Tolkien growing up. Honestly, she never mentioned it, but Dad, I knew about Tolkien before this. And I do know that at one point he did read The Hobbit to me, but that was after I had already seen this movie. So, oh, hold on one second. Michael, yes, stand by. But my first exposure to the world of Tolkien as a whole was this movie, the theatrical version. So, X-Wing, what about you? How did you first hear about Tolkien? You're not coming through, man.
you're muted, buddy.
Sorry. Yeah, I muted myself. I was typing. It's a curse. I bought one of those keyboards that's really like clacky, and so it's nice when you're typing on it. But if you do it on a stream, it's just clack 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 clack. So I got to remember to unmute myself.
I gotcha.
It was my brother. Yeah, my brother Philip was huge into Lord of the Rings, and he had been through the books, and then the movies came out, and it was like you're going on this journey with me. We were not close as brothers when we were kids, but Tolkien definitely brought us closer.
I gotcha. And so, did you jump into it movies first or books first?
Movies. I still haven't read the books.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I'll probably have to get on that at some point.
Yeah, I've read them through once when I was in high school. I keep telling myself I want to do it again, and I do want to do it again. I've got digital versions of them on my iTunes library. I just have yet to sit down and actually do it.
Yeah.
So, kind of getting everyone up to speed from what we were talking about before Baron told his story. Talking about Lord of the Rings like this has been something that I wanted to do really since we branched away from Star Wars. Even when we were still called the Star Wars guys, when I made the decision we're not just going to be a Star Wars channel, we're going to talk about anything pop culture. I've wanted to do it that long, and I decided, you know what? The wait is over. We're getting into this. So tonight we're going to talk Fellowship of the Ring, the extended edition. And then we're going to get into Two Towers, hopefully next week, Return of the King week after that, and then roll right on into the Hobbit trilogy. So we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to walk through the movie beat by beat. And then one thing I specifically want to do, and as I said, Baron, I'll mostly rely on you for this. I want to point out how the movies are different from the books. So as we come to those, we'll address those, starting, of course, with the opening narration from Gladriel, where she's saying, "The world is changing. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air." And then we get the title shot. And then immediately it began with the forging of the great rings. And hold on one second. We got a guest here. Whoopa, what's up, man?
Whoopa, whoopa.
Hello.
What's up?
What's up?
So, Whoopa, we just got into we're just now beginning to describe the movie, but before we go any further, do you want to real quick explain for us how you first got into Tolkien?
My mom is an English teacher, so she always just like really liked it. And when the movies came out, when I was but a wee whoopa, she got the box set when they came out. So I actually go to the theaters for it. I actually, when I was little, like those entrance, like the old Warenberg opener, that was really loud and it hurt my ears and made me scared. So I didn't like going to the movie theater.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But so we got the set because it's my mom, big English teacher, fan of Tolkien. And
Okay.
so I don't remember when I first watched them, but I've watched them a lot all the time. I mean, pretty much as soon as they released the full trilogy together, it's on DVDs when I've been watching it.
Okay. Yeah, we saw them, of course, as they released in the theatrical versions. I never saw the extended edition until I was out on my own in the Navy, and I just picked up the box set. I've still got it there on my shelf. So getting back to the movie itself. So we see the creation and, of course, the giving out of the rings of power. And I want to bring in Michael, or Melkor, as he's calling himself now.
I am the Elder King Melkor, the first and mightiest of the Valar, who was before the world and made it. The shadow of my purpose lies upon Arda, and all that is in it bends slowly and surely to my will.
Are you actually quoting something?
Yes, that is a quote from the Children of Hurin.
Okay. So for those that don't know, Michael is currently on a journey to collect every single piece of work that Tolkien has made. So how are you with that collection right now, Michael?
So far, so good. In fact, my collection has actually ended, for now at least, with my acquiring of The Fall of Gondolin, The Fall of Numenor, and the Book of Beren and Luthien. But of course, I've got all the main books like the Silmarillion and the Children of Hurin.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure we're going to need all your knowledge from that because, like I said, we're going to walk through the movie as we usually do. And one thing I definitely want to bring to light with this movie series is the differences between movies and book. So, getting back to the story, we see the elves receive their rings of power. We see the dwarves receive their rings of power. And then, of course, we see the 9 kings of men receiving their rings of power. And watching it again with the context of what I know from what happened with the creation, and I'm not talking about the Amazon show.
Yeah, no.
But it's obvious why the men would take the rings, and it's obvious why the dwarves would take the rings. The dwarves were naturally greedy, and the men, I guess, were enticed by the desires for more power. Why did the elves, Gladriel among them, why did they think it was a good idea to take those rings?
So I could actually take this if I can.
Go ahead.
Go right ahead.
So it's not like that, actually. So the way that the movie sort of presents it is that there were a total of 19 rings made, which that was true. However, the original plan for Sauron was he wanted to create 16 rings of power to make all the different races fall under their dominion. Now, I'm going to try to give a Cliff Notes version because this is going to be a lot. So, at first, he goes before the elves as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, is sort of an emissary of the Valar, which they're ultimately the angels of the Tolkien universe.
Okay.
And what he's trying to do is that he's trying to give of his knowledge of smithing and infusing magic into rings based on what he learned from one of the Valar named Outlay, the smith, who also was the creator of the dwarves. So he tries the dwarves first, but the dwarves are too stubborn, and so he realizes that's not going to happen. And so he then proceeds to go for men. And with men, it's exactly the way that you say it, where men are a little bit more drawn to power or the pursuit of power, especially since when it comes to men, most of them, if not all of them, seek to achieve immortality. Now, the three rings of the elves, those were actually made in secret, so Sauron did not oversee the creation of those rings.
Okay.
So all the way from the get-go, the rings of power were designed to dominate Middle Earth and install thralls in the different races of Middle Earth.
Okay. With, of course, the end goal being that Sauron has control over all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And hello, of course, to Phil McCracken. What's up, man? So the rings are made, and then, of course, to quote the movie, they were all of them deceived. Another ring was made. So Sauron, help me out with this, Michael. So Sauron wasn't satisfied with just those rings being under those control. He wanted to make the ring to even further enforce that control.
He was going to make that ring no matter what. If
Mhm.
I had to compare it to anything like that, it's kind of like the central processing unit of a computer, where the one ring is that central processing unit, and then the
Mhm.
other rings fall under the dominion of the one, or the RAM, or the GPU, or whatever falls under the dominion of the CPU. Does that kind
Okay.
of make sense?
It does, yes.
Yeah, basically it was his way of trying to not just tempt but take over. Basically, it's like the Apple
Okay.
and not the computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he creates the ring. And real quick, I want to say hello to Drunk 3PO. Thanks for joining. He says X-Wing brought me here. I'm glad that
Hello.
you're here, man. And I hope you stick around and enjoy the discussion. So Sauron makes the ring,
Mhm.
and his influence starts to spread across the entirety of Middle-earth. And this, of course, causes the battle where the men and the elves team up to defeat Sauron,
Yeah.
which is the huge fight that we see at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the Battle of the Last Alliance.
Right. So looking strictly at the movie, when you guys first saw that's like the first bit of action that we see. What did you guys think? Did that, especially for those that were already familiar with Tolkien, did that ease any nervousness you might have had about whether or not they were going to do this well or what?
Well, to be honest, I really wasn't too nervous seeing some of the stuff being done and what was being said. Because back then we had people that were actually intelligent and sat back and said they're going to try to keep true to the works. Of course, the entire battle that we saw in the beginning really wasn't in Lord of the Rings. It was all of the Silmarillion and other works that were leading up to the Lord of the Rings. So it's a nice, precursor, the prologue to the story in the form of the movie. And it really, for someone who did not read Tolkien or know anything about Tolkien, do a good setup about what is going on. I think it was brilliantly executed. Brilliantly executed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can definitely say from my point of view as someone that did see the movies before ever reading the books that it did, establish Sauron as the ultimate bad guy really well, and it set up why the ring ultimately ended up where it ended up.
Yeah.
Right. And being that they were being faithful to the lore of Tolkien, like I said, because this really wasn't part of Lord of the Rings per se, except by tales about it. It, doing it so well like that and giving us the full impact of everything that they had there. Yeah, it was easy to lay back and go, okay, this is going to be a heck of a story if they keep this up.
Okay.
Don't screw this up on us. No.
Of course.
It's a tale as
X-Wing.
old as time, man.
Mm-hmm.
Tale as
Oh,
old
yeah.
as time. I mean, it's creation, right? And when you look at how, I mean, obviously there's a lot of extracurricular material when it comes to what happens before, first, second, and third, or first and second, but yeah, I mean, look, he established the perfect world, right? He created the history of the world. He created the gods. He created the creatures that inhabited it. It was beautiful. So any story that you tell in that universe, if treated properly, is going to be perfect.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's
Absolutely.
believable no matter how fantastical, because the world's been set up.
Right. And Phil in the chat is absolutely right. When it comes around to the whole thing, well, it wasn't Sauron that
It was Melkor.
Yeah.
right,
You're
because
right.
he used to. They didn't get into it, at least not in Lord of the Rings. I can't say for the Hobbit because I haven't seen all the Hobbit movies.
They didn't.
But he was the one
Yeah, they
that
didn't touch
took
it.
They
the
immediately
elves.
name dropped him.
Yeah, he took the elves and twisted them because they were not able to. They're not able to create. They're only able to twist in deform.
Evil.
And
Yeah.
basically, they took the elves and a group of elves, twisted them and shaped them, and that's where you got the orcs and the goblins from.
Right. So that is true. Melkor ultimately is the Satan of that world. I was just looking at it from my point of view of someone that didn't know all of that when I first saw the movie and thought that Sauron was the be all and end all bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously, they didn't get into it because, again, that's a lot of lore to get into. But just sit back though and look at this as a Roman Catholic fantasy book, and everything will fall into place because this is a very Roman Catholic book. I'm not Catholic, but I understand Catholicism enough, and this is very much a Catholic book. So keep that in mind.
It was created for a history that didn't exist because those histories were wiped out.
Yeah. I mean, the simple thing goes, the simple in-world thing was Tolkien, who did not like the French at all, thought that the English history...
He is British. I think that's just a given once you have that.
Right. Well, yeah, but even more so, he felt that that the myths and lore of Britain and England in general was polluted too much with French, the Gauls, the King Arthur legends and myth and lore, basically got twisted and warped into a French style telling of the history, not part of what would be the basis of England. So he set about trying to make an Anglo-Saxon mythology for Anglo-Saxon people. And, this is why these books are a certain way. It's Anglo-Saxon, not African, not Serbian. It's Anglo-Saxon. And yes, throw in the Nordics because the Dramatics and the Scandinavians, really, they're all in the same tree. They're all in the same tree.
But he wasn't so foolish as to not have those cultures interact. I mean, you have the Easterlings, right? You have, I mean, they still exist in the world 100%, but definitely not to the extent that's being handled today.
Right, exactly. I mean, you had the two blue wizards, which, of course, not in these books at all. They went to the east and were never seen again.
Yeah.
And
also,
Brown
Phil,
and Gray
to get in
stayed.
here.
What is it, Mike?
I was going to say, Phil ought to get in here if he can.
Dude, I haven't talked to Phil McCracken in so long.
You're lucky.
I will drop him. I'm dropping Phil the link now if he wants to join. So
why are you doing this to us? Why?
So back to the story. So the three main players leading the Last Alliance are, of course, Elrond, Elendil, and his son Isildur.
Mhm.
During the battle, Elendil is, of course, struck down by Sauron, and in a last-ditch effort to, I guess, kind of save his own life, but also strike Sauron down once and for all, Isildur gets his hands on the sword Nardzil. Sauron steps on it and breaks it, and he uses the broken blade to slash the ring from Sauron's hand.
So correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong, but that was a movie thing. In the book, they're already dead, and Isildur just cuts the ring off of his hand, right?
Yes, so the book version of it is that Elrond is not the commander, but I'm sure he was there during the
He was there.
battle.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but the commander of the elves was High King Gilgalad, and
Yeah.
he and Elendil were facing off against Sauron, and by that time, when Sauron was defeated, he was Gilgalad and Elendil were dead, and then Isildur, yeah, the broken sword and cut the ring off his finger.
So Sauron was basically down for the count by this point, by the time that Isildur did that. Is that correct?
Yeah, not as
Yes.
flashy as the movie, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that. I mean, I'm sure he could because he was a supernatural being, like on the level of the Valar. But I kind of have a hard time believing that his armor just exploded like that after he got his hand cut.
Well, his physical form did deteriorate. It was gone. He, basically through that time he was trying to remanifest himself. One of the biggest presents was the necromancer in the Hobbit,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and then eventually be able to start getting back more and more to becoming a more corporeal entity.
Right, which manifested itself as the eye. By the way, speaking of eyes that are always on us, I want to say hello to the real king and savior of pop talk, Phil McCracken.
Oh no!
What's
Don't
up?
What's up,
do not
Phil?
be the troll.
Hey, Phil.
What's up?
How you
I
Long
doing,
will,
time no razzing, buddy.
I will explain real quick about the ability of Sauron to re-manifest his form. The
Sure.
way it's explained, all of the children, well, not children of Arda, but all the so-called angels, if you want to call them that,
Yeah, basically.
have the ability that, think of it like a 2-liter of soda.
Mhm.
Every time they would die, and it takes time for them, they can remanifest their form.
Mhm.
But every time they go into that well to do it, it can't refill. So for like Sauron, who has died, let's see, 3 times technically,
Mhm.
the third time he doesn't have the ability to remanifest his form because
Okay.
he went into the well. Okay. Now, that does not mean even in the Lord of the Rings world right now, after he's been defeated, that he is completely gone. He just can't adapt a form.
Hmm.
Okay.
Now, when you see like in the books, they don't, and you don't see it in the movie, when the bad wizard, the one that was good to turn bad,
Yeah, Sauron.
Saruman.
Saruman.
yeah,
Saruman
when
the-
he dies, and he doesn't die how they showed in the movie. When he
Mhm.
dies, the same thing happens to him as in Sauron. He
Mhm.
turns into like a ghost-like spirit, and at first it looks like the spirit's going towards Arda, the Undying Lands, but a
Mhm.
wind comes and blows him away.
Yep.
He still exists. He
Mhm.
just cannot manifest a form. There's the
Okay.
difference. Now Melkor is different. He's imprisoned. He's in
Yeah.
prison in what you would call like
He's imprisoned in the
purgatory.
timeless void. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like purgatory. And
Okay.
as of right now, he can't get out. At
Mhm.
some point, he will get out. But as of right now, he can't. Hence the reason why Sauron took its place was because there was no one else. That was it. So
Okay.
that explains why why the third time he died in the movie, why he can never manifest a form as long as the world is whole. So
But you actually bring up
Okay.
another good point, Phil, because this has happened again, but in a different way, where kind of a spoiler for those who haven't read the books, but if we were to read the Fall of Numenor story, Sauron actually drowns in Numenor in his fair form, which basically made him unable to take on a fair form or a beautiful form.
he doesn't have the
Interesting.
ability to look like an elf.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they
Okay.
tried to do it. There's a deleted scene where they try to do it in the movie, which I think they should have included, as opposed to overimpose and put a troll there.
Yeah.
But when he first appears, he takes on in the movie his elfin fair form, and then he reverts back to
The
one
armor.
where he's in armor. Yeah, I wish they would have kept the original idea of Aragorn fighting Sauron that way, but
Yeah, that. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's deleted scenes of that.
Yep.
But we can
There
cover
is.
that when we get to Return of the King. Matt Cave, real quick, has a question. He says, question for everyone that had read the books. How close was the image in your mind of characters and locations to what appeared in the films?
I would say dead on.
Yeah.
If you're talking the where some people sometimes will get confused is the animated the animated Lord of the Rings, because there's a lot more in that than they actually put in the movie.
Right.
And I would say visually wise, almost 99% they got right in the movie.
Yeah.
How everything is designed. But the
Okay.
feel, the actual feel and the look. All right, for example, when you're looking at Gollum, Smeagol,
Yeah.
it's more accurate depiction is in the cartoon, because he was
Interesting.
more when he got warped and deformed over time. He actually had like a more frog-like ability look to him, as opposed to what we got, like a, I don't even know what you want to call him in the movie. Not that it's not bad image.
A gremlin. We'll call
more
it
like
that.
Emaciated dwarf, or
Yeah.
emaciated hobbit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the especially the orgs, I think the orgs were actually better depicted in the movie as opposed to the animation. They kind of wasn't that great.
Okay.
And for me, I think pretty much everything about the only thing that you could really have a quibble with was the land of Rohan, because that's supposed to be plains instead of the hilly steppes, hilly lands that we saw in the movies. But you're filming in New Zealand; it's hard to find a flat piece of land anywhere in New Zealand. So
Right.
we'll give them a pass on that one.
Yeah.
And Whoopa, you also were someone that read the books before the movies. How did you think about this question as far as how accurate they got everything?
That is not true, actually. I have not read the books.
Oh,
Get 'em outta here.
okay.
Get them
Never
out
mind.
here.
I will make one thing pointed out at the Battles Helm's Deep in the book: the elves didn't come.
No.
Okay.
That was Rohan on its own. The elves did not. It's a nice touch. I even though it's not Tolkien what they did with it, but I do like it in that instance. In the movie, they don't show or tell enough about what happens with the elves or what happens in the dwarfing kingdom, like you see in the Hobbit, because they're actually fighting the same as Rohan and Gondor. You don't hear about it. That's
Yeah, the
only
dwarves
difference.
are almost completely missing. Like
Yeah.
almost entirely. I mean, with the exception of the little bit of tidbits that we get in Moria, they were almost completely missing from Lord of the Rings.
Because they fight in
wow.
the north, and their fight in the north is just as big and as important as what they were fighting in the south. Which
Like if I remember correctly, at the time that Aragorn and all of them were having the battle at the Black Gates, Day and Ironfoot and I want to say the grandson of King Bard were having a fight at basically the doorstep of Erebor.
Yes, and they both get killed. They both get
So-
killed in that battle. They win, but they both get killed in that battle.
By the way,
Yeah.
hello to Death Wish. Thanks for joining. I believe this is your first time. If this is your first time watching, please make sure to subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. I have
There-
a goal. I want to hit 1,000 by the end of this year.
That's a nice goal.
You can
Yeah.
do it.
Thank you.
There's three things I want to point out that, as a Tolkien fan, that I wish the movie, even though it probably would have been too much,
Real,
they should have had Elrond's twin sons there.
I was going to bring
Yeah.
that up for you, Phil.
And
These are-
the elf lord that comes back, he dies. He originally dies at the Battle of Gondolin.
Mhm.
And just like the wizards, he is sent back. Glorfindel, I think it's his name. Don't hold me to
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is Glorfindel.
He's there at the battle of the final battle of the Last Alliance.
Mhm.
He's there. He witnesses the death of the High King and everything of the elves.
Mhm.
That's something that we didn't get. We didn't get to see. There is they film parts of it, but you don't see the death of the High King. The same time Arundi dies, right before he dies, the High King had died,
Yeah,
and
Yoda
Sauron
lad.
touches him with his hand and literally burns him to death. You
Interesting.
only get a quick glimpse when you're seeing what they put in at the very beginning. You see a quick glimpse of the High King of the Elves, but you don't see nothing else after that. But they said there is footage of that showing his death, and then showing, as they did Elendil getting killed.
Yeah.
So,
Where was Thranduil in all of this?
he was
was
probably in Mirkwood just being a coward. I say that jokingly, of course. I
no,
know
he
wasn't
fought. He's
really-
fighting with the North. He's fighting with the dwarves and the Men of Dale.
Oh,
They're
okay.
fighting off
Yeah.
an invasion of Ruin, whatever that land right next to that borders north of Mordor. They have always occasionally if you read the books, they have constantly always invaded. Sauron uses them to invade. Rohan uses them to invade, just to keep everybody in a free peoples off balance. And so while he's doing his thing in the south, they're doing their thing in the north.
Okay.
All right. The only thing is, he doesn't. If you have 9 of the wraiths, he don't even send none up there.
Yeah.
Because he's not interested in what they're doing. He just wants to keep the people in the north busy as he wipes out the south. Because once he wipes out the south, the north is done.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So getting back to what's going on where we're at in the movie. So Isildur claims the ring after cutting it from Sauron, and then we jump ahead and see that he's wearing the ring, of course, around his neck, and he and his band of men get ambushed by orcs. Isildur tries to use the ring to escape into the river, but the ring, quote unquote, betrays Isildur to his death, meaning it falls off him, and the orcs shoot him in the water. Is that book accurate? Because
You're
we
asking the
know,
wrong guy here. I don't know.
I mean, we know in the book that yes, Isildur loses the ring and is killed, but in that particular manner.
in the book,
Mhm.
first they don't tell you any reason in the movie why he's going north, and you have to remember the period of time after he defeats Sauron and he does not destroy the ring, and he goes north.
Yeah.
That's almost like 5 to 10 years later. And he's going north because he's going to see, I guess, his great super great uncle Elrond. And he has his sons with him. And the reason he's going north that way
okay.
is he's trying to go through friendly territory, Lorne,
Mhm.
and then go into Rivendell. Because you have to remember, Moria and the mountains are now controlled by orcs or goblins, whatever you want to call them. Well, they ambush him, and there's a big fight, and both his sons get killed while they're trying to tell him, go free yourself, try to get away from the battle, escape. And then
Mhm.
how he dies, this is how he dies. And the orcs actually win the battle. And a group of men, wild men, arrived late, but they destroyed the orcs. Now, one man survives, and he's the one that brings the sergeant also and another artifact to Elrond. And
Mhm.
that's where Elrond keeps it there.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
and that technically does not end the line of kings. The line of kings ends with another descendant.
Real quick,
Of
Phil, I do want to jump in
Right.
here real quick. X-Wing has to go. So,
Right.
X-Wing, any final thoughts?
I got a boot. Thanks for having me on, dude. It's been way too long.
Absolutely, man.
I saw
And
that video of us down at ICCC, and I was just cackling, man. That was way too much fun. It's been
It
way
was.
too long. If I mean, I don't know how interested anyone is hearing basically a Tolkien historian talk about what's going on with the next season of Rings of Power, but I'll have my brother on who
Okay.
all of these questions can be answered within a breath hair of a moment. This guy is so obsessed with Lord of the Rings. We're talking on Sunday morning, so
Oh,
keep an eye out for that one. It'll be great. We'll get him on stream. He's gonna have a little bit better internet this time, and we'll be talking about it, man. We'll be talking about Anatar. We'll be talking about how Rings of Power 1 ended and how it's all that more confusing about what's going on with the rings and Celebrimbor and all that good stuff. So
okay. And I tell you what, man, if you're able to make it next week, you're welcome to come back for Two Towers.
yeah, shoot me an invite. If I can make it, I'll be there.
All right, sounds good. Well,
right,
again, man,
guys.
thank you for coming in here.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful night.
You
Take
too.
care, X-Wing.
Bye, guys.
So getting back to what you were saying, Phil.
Yeah, like I said, they skipped that little battle. You only see like a little skirmish. It was a little bit bigger than that. And
Okay.
another reason why he's going north is not only to visit Elrond, but he's trying to get back. He wants to go to the Kingdom of the North. I forget the name of it. It begins with an A. Honor, I think it is.
Yeah.
He's going there to take, he's also going to be the king since his dad died and his brother died. He's now wants to be king of both kingdoms. So that's the reason why he's heading north.
Yeah. Towards the river
and
Anduin.
Yeah, and after when he loses the ring, that's when the kingdoms split into two.
Mhm.
And then the
Okay.
northern kingdoms go through a whole bunch of turbulence, and it actually splits into three, and then it gets wiped out.
And
The
then Isildur
kingdom-
gets resurrected by Sauron by a ring of power and then becomes a ring wraith. The end.
That's a reference to Shadow of War. No.
I will tell you
No.
this. I would take the lore in the shadows of the game, then I would
Yeah.
take what they're doing in the Rings of Power, because one of the big gripes I have with that is they condense a whole period of 1,000 years into like 1 year. All right.
Oh yeah.
They don't show Sauron getting defeated by the Numenor and being dragged back over to Numenor. So they don't show that. And that
Plus
takes
they
over
made
1,000 years, and they
Galadriel-
pretty much try to show it like it was done in a year.
Yeah,
No.
They
that
also
didn't sit
made
right with me.
Galadriel insufferable
Yeah.
because
And
she's the
and
best
and,
with
and
elf
trust me,
Ephar.
as much as powerful as Galadriel is, she's not a warrior. Her brothers were. Her brothers were, because
Yep.
they're the ones that swore the oath. And that oath is more important than anything that you would get. Let's just say this. As much as the Lord of the Rings has to do with Melkor and the fall and everything, the oath of the seven brothers to get the Silmarils back is one of the biggest events in Lord of the Rings. Everything stems from that.
The sons of Feanor.
Yes. And the important thing to know is Celebrimbor, who forges the rings with Sauron's aid, his grandfather is the one that forged the Silmarillions. So when when Sauron was forging the rings, he wasn't stupid of trying to go to somebody that could help him unwillingly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, there's some things even in Peter Jackson's films. I have some disagreements, but I don't have as much disagreement with the films as much as I have with that TV show.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
But also you got to remember another thing in the book too. Strider carried the shards of the sword with him.
Yes, he kept it with him.
And Peter Jackson decided not to have it because he thought it would look ridiculous having Strider pulling out this broken sword.
Right.
Yeah, that was something that if you ever watched the cartoon version that came out in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
You'll see Aragorn in that cartoon. He's carrying a broken sword. He's using a broken sword.
Yeah, I was actually wondering why that was, because I didn't know that was from the book. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Peter Jackson thought it would be silly. It would look silly and foolish that the audience wouldn't get it that he was carrying a broken sword. So he had him substitute a complete sword for him to use until the sword was reforged.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
I would say when you're talking about the Lord of the Rings, when you're talking movie, the actual first movie, Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship, if you want to call it that, that one is a little bit out of all three more closer to the book than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got more right in that, even though there are some discrepancies. But the movie itself, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, is more almost, I would say, a good 95% dead on with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish they would have did a couple things, but not just Elrond's twin sons, like I said, Glorfindel, but Tom Bombadil.
Yeah,
that's very important that he comes and saves them. When you see them, the hobbits when they first leave Hobbiton, he saves them. He's the one that saves them. And and at the end on Return of the King, that's where before Gandalf goes back to the west, he spends a whole year with Tom Bombadil to try to recover from all that. That's how worn out he was. So, and that's very important because that just goes to show you have to remember when the powers of the Undying Lands, the higher ups, send these wizards over, they are put up with the handicap, not only their appearance of being old age, but also they experience everything a normal human or elf living in the Middle Earth experiences. Remember, these people, the Sauron, Radagast, Gandalf, these are like basic angels. Basic angels. Right. So you're taking a basic angel, not like an archangel, take a basic angel, if you're still a higher being, and then having him come to Earth, and now he's got to experience some life as a human.
Yeah.
Hunger, disease, all that. Any of that they could experience.
I'm good.
and corruption. We can't forget corruption.
Yes, also. Corruption. They have the ability to fall. Like Sauron, he fell. He fell. Yeah. But yeah, that's the important thing to note. That's why Gandalf, you see him, and I say the actor that played him perfectly. Even when you see him in the movie and he's doing stuff, you see him sigh, you see him get fatigued,
Yeah.
You see him get beat up. When he gets beat up by Sauron and he's trapped on top of the tower there, you see him in the movie. He's beat up. He's fatigued. So he isn't a superpower angel anymore while he's in Middle Earth. Unlike Sauron, who still has his power like a fallen angel. He still has his power. There's the difference between what you're facing. He didn't lose none of his power.
And he's also a higher level. He's a higher level too than.
Yeah. So there, and the other thing to notice on the movie Lord of the Rings, Radagast is the person responsible for getting Gandalf trapped by Sauron, because Sauron sends Radagast to find Gandalf because he's figuring Gandalf knows who has the ring. And when he brings him back, everything in the movie is accurate up until that point. But when he's trapped on top of the thing, that isn't he didn't speak to him off in the book. What happens is Radagast sends an eagle to report to Sauron, who technically still head of the Order of the Five. And when the eagle's there, he sees Gandalf on top, and he takes him back.
Okay.
So Radagast is responsible for first getting him kind of imprisoned, but then he's also responsible for getting him out.
Yeah, Radagast wasn't evil. He lost his way. He became enthralled with the nature of Middle Earth, and he got off the path of what the plan was about, to try to keep Sauron from getting power again. And so basically, the Blue Wizards failed because they went to the east and were never seen from again. No one knows what happened to them. Radagast lost his way.
Their token letter says that they might not have failed in their mission. That maybe because they grew a resistance to Sauron in the east, that's why one of the reasons the east couldn't bring all their manpower and just totally wipe out the free peoples of Middle Earth. So he does. Yeah. The only person we don't know about what happens is Radagast. You don't know if he's dead or alive, but in Tolkien's mind, he was more, when he came over here, when he was serving over in the Undying Lands to one of the archangels, let's just call him that. I forget to have a special name for him in Tolkien's book.
Real quick, Phil, on this, go ahead and finish this point, but then I want to get back to the story.
No, it's fine. It's like I said, you can skip that. I mean, it's minor detail, but it's important because it's in the book.
Well, we'll get there too. It's also when we get to that point in the movie too.
So, like I said, so Isildur dies. The ring is lost for, I think the movie said, 2,500 years until Gollum finds it. And of course, how he finds it, we'll get to that when we talk about Return of the King. But the point is, Gollum finds it, and we all know what happens. He comes under its influence and deteriorates as a being, and, takes it back to his cave in the Misty Mountains, obsesses over it, and then Bilbo stumbles along and finds it while he's on his own journey. And again, we'll talk about that when we get to the Hobbit movies.
Right.
And then Bilbo, completes his quest and takes the ring home. And that brings us to the proper beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, where we see Frodo, played by Elijah Wood, who hears Gandalf, of course, played by Sir Ian McKellen, riding along on his wagon on his way to Bilbo's 111th birthday party.
Correct.
And let's go ahead. We already talked about it now, but I want to really harp on this one. This is one of the best cast movie series ever. There is no one, I mean no one, that is miscast in this movie, in my opinion. Everyone looks the part, everyone sounds the part, everyone acts the part. Would you guys disagree?
Nope, not one bit, especially...
You're talking movie?
I'm talking movie.
Okay, well, just remember, they had to replace the original person playing Aragorn.
Yeah.
And originally, it was a much younger person.
Stuart Townsend.
Yeah, and they decided they would make Aragorn a more, I don't want to say middle-aged, but close to middle-aged. So, yeah. I think it was. I mean, if you knew the person that acting that originally was going to be Aragorn, I think that was a better fit for the acting part. But Aragorn's appearance in the book was always youthful, almost like the elf guy. I forget. I can't believe I'm getting a mind blank.
Orlando
Rondell-
Bloom,
The guy,
he's talking
Orlando
about
Bloom's character. What's his name?
Legolas.
Douglas.
Legolas. You see how he has a young appearance?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had Aragon's supposed to have a young appearance at that point in time, even though he is like 70, 80 years old.
Right. Because they're
Okay.
long lived.
Okay. So, but it was a good choice in the switch. It happens in a lot of times. Right before filming, people don't work out.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Which-
I mean, they
which is
definitely got a better
understandable.
person, better person with better acting chops. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, like I said, whether he was the intended one or not, I still to this day cannot imagine anyone else live action that could pull off Aragorn in the same way that Viggo Mortensen did. But again, we'll get to that when we get to his character introduction.
the guy who plays Sauron,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot his name, Mr. Dooku. I'm trying to think his
You mean
name.
Saruman? Saruman.
Yeah.
Christopher
Got-
Lee.
Christopher Lee. He was originally asked to play Gandalf.
I know.
believe
In fact, Mr. Tolkien himself initially tapped him for Gandalf. And if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of a little bit of a resentment that Christopher Lee had toward Ian McKellen. Like, it was at least one time mentioned, I was supposed to be Gandalf, right?
Well, according to him in an interview, it was his idea that he felt that he would be better off playing Sauron because he has played
Saruman.
more. Yeah, thank you. More evil type characters,
Mhm.
and he felt the character of Saruman had more of an older appearance than what a youthful Gandalf would be. Not that they were youthful, but you know what I mean.
Right. Like, if I'm not
energetic.
mistaken, the wizards in their physical form never are supposed to look young.
No, but definitely Terry McKellen had more spry of a step. So they,
Mhm.
Christopher Lee being quite a bit older, it was kind of the decision that he wasn't. Was this a little too old to be? If if this was like 20 years earlier, yeah, he would have been in a heartbeat Gandalf. But sadly, it was not the case. But he was still great in the role.
Absolutely. But anyways, so Frodo and Gandalf are talking, and of course they make some references to, quote, the incident with the dragon. And he kind of plays Obi-Wan here. If you're referring to the incident of the dragon, I was barely involved. All I did was give your uncle a little nudge out of the door from a certain point of view.
But he's not wrong.
He's not. He really did just give him the motivation. Bilbo was the one that made the choice to go with Thorin and company.
Right. And they did split their ways because Gandalf had to go and see what was going on with this necromancer. So they were on their own until the Army of the Five Battles.
True. So eventually, of course, and we get the funny scene of Gandalf setting off. Actually, hold on. I got to back up a little bit. Before we even see Frodo and Gandalf, we actually see Bilbo, played by, I want to say his name is Mr. Ian Holm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in home. Yep.
And he is giving a little bit of he's writing in his book, and he writes the chapter concerning hobbits, and he's just talking about the daily life of a hobbit, how they're a very simple folk, and they don't like to involve themselves with the outside world. Their passions are food, agriculture, tobacco, basically just I guess you could say the perfect rural community.
Right.
Would you say that's accurate?
And basically that's how the book really does kind of open up discussing concerning hobbits, that they're just these simple people living simple lives. They're not simpletons, but they are. And he's writing in the Red Book, which was the history book that he wrote in And when he left to go to the Undying Lands, or when he left to actually to go, to go to Elrond's place, Frodo took over writing it, and when Frodo left, Samwise worked on it until he
Right.
went west over the sea. So, so that book is very important in the history of Lord of the Rings as being a history. But yeah, I think it's really close down to the opening of the book and doing a great job explaining to the audience who may not have read the books
Did a good job
what
for
Hobbit's
me.
about. Yeah.
So with that, then that of course leads into Gandalf arriving at Bilbo's house,
Mhm.
and we see the reunion between Bilbo and Gandalf, and of course, Ian Holm plays a perfect Bilbo. In fact, I want to say that if they had done the Hobbit trilogy before they did Lord of the Rings, I bet Ian Holm would have carried that entire trilogy if they had replaced him with Martin. If he had basically been given Martin Freeman's script, he would have knocked it out the park.
Well,
Yeah.
well, to let you know, Ian Holm did play Bilbo or Frodo. He play Frodo, I should say. My apologies. He did it in the radio adaptation for the BBC back in 1981. So Ian Holm has the distinction of playing not only Bilbo but Frodo.
I did not know that.
Mhm.
Wow.
And
Yeah, you try to remember this before the movies and in the 70s, the animated cartoon.
Mhm.
When the animated cartoon come out, a lot of people said, and including Christopher Tolkien, you're never going to get these made into movies because they're just too long. The idea of a trilogy, didn't start happening until you could say Planet of the Apes.
Star Wars.
This is way before Star Wars. Way
Okay.
before Star Wars. And so when they did release start doing the cartoon, you were told, if you want a visual token besides what you heard on the radio,
Mhm.
this is as close as you're going to get, and that's it. And
Okay.
the cartoons were very successful. I remember as a kid, that was what everybody was talking about. It looks kind of different now going back because it was made in the 70s,
Right.
but overall they were better than nothing. And like I said, you did have the radio, and the radio version is, if you're a type of person that can listen to an audiobook, think of the radio version like an audiobook.
Hmm. So yeah, like I said, I think Ian Holm as Bilbo, again, just a further examples of just how well this movie series was cast. And of course, we get a peek into Bilbo's life post The Hobbit, and Gandalf is friendly as he always is with Bilbo, but as Bilbo's going into his whole "I'm old Gandalf and I don't look it, but I feel it," Gandalf, let's be honest, Gandalf always knew, or at least suspected, that Bilbo had the ring with him, right?
He thought he had a ring, but he wasn't sure if it was the ring. See, there's a thing that's missing when they explain about the master ring and the 7 for the dwarves, the 9 for men.
Mhm.
They were rings created before it. You can call them practice, when they were forging, and they didn't have the power as like the rings like that were eventually created for the dwarfs, men, and eventually the One Ring. But they did have other rings that Sauron and Killmonger made as they were. It was like a step. Well, we'll make this ring. Oh, this ring will have the power to make you invisible. Okay. So there were prototype rings. That's the best way I can describe it. And Gandalf originally thought he got a prototype ring, magical ring. He didn't think that he didn't know that it was the actual ring of power until you can use the birthday party as an example of when he really started to suspect. And the one thing the movie does get is when he leaves Frodo and tells him, stay home, don't do anything. I got to go do something. What he did was he rode all the way to the White City, and he went into the history books to find out what he can find out about the ring. And then you noticed, and you have to remember movies, you don't know how much time has passed. He goes back to Frodo, and that's when he tested it in the fire. And if you remember, at first, the ring didn't show and reveal the writing. It was a couple moments later, then you realize, oh, he now sees the writing. Then he realized, okay, he actually has the One Ring.
One thing that was cool, I just found this out. I guess I didn't pay close enough attention, but someone was talking about it in that scene with him in the library. You can see, like, they kind of have a pan shot. It starts out, you see he's got like the 2 or 3 candles there, full candles, and when they pan over, he's going over something else. Now you can see like those candles are not quite nubs but close to it, and it's like that's how long he's been poring over these documents and studying stuff to find out. Like, he's been in there for pretty much a whole big candle's worth. Like, they weren't small.
And that is wow.
Even longer than that.
There's one thing to know. There's another individual that knows about the ring, but the information, he's just missing it. Sauron, before the last meeting of the White Council, okay?
Yes.
Saruman.
Yeah, Saruman, thank you. Right before they do the battle where they go after Sauron and drive him out of Milkwood Forest as the necromancer, he's looking for Saruman is looking for the ring. He actually sends people to look at the battlefield where Arondi's son Isildur gets killed. He finds the necklace. He finds the bones. He finds everything but the ring. Now, he's constantly telling people, including the people on the White Council, you're never going to find the ring. The river took it and it got swept out in the ocean. That's only a diversion. He is hunting for the ring just as much as Sauron is sending out the wraiths to look for the ring. Everybody's looking for the ring.
Right.
Okay. So it's important to know. You don't know that Sauron was looking for the ring until after everything is said and done, and they actually go into Orthanc, and they find the chamber, and they find the bones of Isildur, they find the chain, they find all the artifacts he was hunting for to get that ring.
Okay.
And that was one of the reasons he imprisons Gandalf on top of the tower after he defeats him, because he wants the information of the ring. And now he knows the only thing he's close of, he knows that a hobbit has it, but he don't know what hobbit or who's the hobbit that has it. That's the only thing that keeps Saruman from getting the ring. He doesn't know which one. And the important thing to know in the book, not in the movie, he goes to the hobbit, and him and Wormtongue go to the Hobbiton, and they take it over. They actually take it over.
But though we'll get to when we talk about Return of the King.
Far later on.
That's way ahead.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, if Gandalf suspected before that was the one thing, we wouldn't have had the story. Mission accomplished. But knowing that there were magic rings in existence beforehand, and he suspected pretty well that Bilbo had a ring, a magic ring, didn't bother him per se until these events here that we had in Hobbiton for his 111th birthday. One, the incredible long life that Bilbo had, and looking as good as he did. Hobbits don't generally live that long or look that good.
Mhm.
This is also, by the way, Frodo's birthday. They had the same birthday, and this was actually the year that Frodo becomes a man, age 33. A Hobbit is considered a man, fully grown man at the age of 33. So for both of these men, it's a big, huge birthday. This is a big event. This is
Can I jump in here
double
and
special.
can I jump in here real quick and say that number one, I didn't know that, but number two, wow, was that kind of just a jerk move on Bilbo from Frodo's point of view? Like, oh my goodness, we're sharing the birthday together. Why did Bilbo just pull this invisibility trick that I didn't know how he could do? Way to
Well,
upstage me, buddy.
Well, I don't think Frodo looked at it that way completely at all. Because again, in many ways, Bilbo was more important because he's 111 years old, still rather youthful for his age, even though he is older. And he is the talk of the town. I mean, he is the Hobbit that went on an adventure.
And
Right.
an important thing to remember, after all this about the ring, Gandalf knows that out of all of creation of living beings on Middle Earth, if anybody's going to hold the ring and not get corrupted, it's a Hobbit.
Mhm.
100 years, let's say for Bobo, but he did not get corrupted by the ring. So when Bobo gives up the ring and leaves the estate and everything to Frodo, he knew if anybody can do anything to destroy that ring, he knew then and there it's got to be in the hands of a Hobbit.
Mhm.
It can't be in the hands. Look, if Gandalf himself can't take the ring,
Through
but
me, it
even
would
he
wield a
tells you,
power too great and terrible to imagine.
yeah, he might try to do good. Same thing for Gladriel. She can't touch that ring, even though she has a ring of power. And don't forget, Gandalf has a ring of power.
Right, one of the older
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, so
But-
but you have to remember the elf rings are different. Even though they are tied to the one ring, Sauron never wanted elf rings.
Mhm.
He knew he couldn't corrupt them. That Calrindal made 3 rings for the elves. They're bound to them, but if you notice, they can use their ring without them being corrupted. That's not the case if one of them were to take the one ring; they will get corrupted.
Okay.
And I do have to take one exception, though. Yeah, Bilbo was corrupted by the ring, but he was able to fight it off good. The hobbits were able to get corrupted, but they seem to have a higher resistance to it.
I mean,
but,
look at how, and I'm sure this was a book thing. This was a movie thing and not so much a book thing, but look at how Bilbo jumps at Frodo to reach for the ring as he's putting on the mithril shirt.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, Bucky's crafting brings up 2 good points. First, starting off
Yeah.
that there was a
Hello.
17-year age gap between Gandalf leaving Frodo with the ring and coming back to prove that it's the one. And so, with that said, Frodo was 55 and the same age as Bilbo when he was on his adventure. So,
Right. I was going to
That
wait
is
for
a
that when
nice
we got to
little
that
detail.
point. I was going to wait when we got to that point, but
yeah.
But still, yeah, exactly. It mirrors. The two men's journeys mirror each other to that degree.
Well, you know, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, this was part of this type of folklore, mythology, world building that Tolkien was, because he looked at all different Anglo-Saxon and Nordic tales and saw the themes that they had in there and how they were entwined with, of course, England.
Right.
And went off on it. It just went to town. It says, boom, here we go. So you're going to find these themes constantly. Everyone wants to talk about all the Anglo-Saxon. You have to throw in some of that Viking Nordic too, because
True.
that's where a lot of this, dwarves, elves, all these creatures came from. You might even sit back and say that the hobbits could be a form of Nissen, uh, which were like the little people that lived in mounds on the farms in Norway. And people still have the Nissen mounds to this day. And when they traveled the world, when the Vikings traveled the world, bits of that legend and mythology got introduced to other parts, like Ireland. They became leprechauns. The Latin, when you went to the Latin countries, they became gnomes because gnome is a Latin word, not a Nordic word. So, so one could say that the Hobbit, being their size and such, are probably derived off of that in the creation of the creatures for the story.
And
Okay.
one thing when you see like Rohan, they modeled that, or Tolkien modeled that after the Saxons.
Yep, that was Saxon.
After the Saxons. The difference is Saxons weren't a cavalry, because the Saxons originally were like the Vikings. They're
Right.
more infantry, but they're at first pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they tried to conquer what we know today as England, they were infantry. They weren't horse riders. But Tolkien took that, switched them. But if you see their armor, their artwork in Lord of the Rings with the Rohan, that's identical to what you would see for Saxons.
And which is very similar to the Nordics as well. There's
So,
not
because
anyone, that part is actually more C.S. Lewis with the Narnia tales, which is why Tolkien was not enthralled with Narnia, because he thought it was too much of a mishmash of too many mythologies that didn't connect, and then throw in Father Christmas while you're at it. It just
Spoiler alert, by the way, we will talk about Narnia at some point on this channel,
Yeah.
right, Michael?
Yeah, we will.
So Tolkien was keeping his more towards, of course, England, Germany, Scandinavia, Finland, because a lot of the stuff that you deal with the elves with language and such came out of the Finnish language, because he thought it was such a beautiful language. So that's where Tolkien was keeping an eye on. Plus the fact that, being that he was with professorships and such, he dealt with a lot of the mythologies and such, the stories, translating some of these together. Him along with Lewis and others. So
don't forget, he was a very good linguist. You would call him a linguist today. He knew how to speak. He knew how to speak Latin. Roman Catholics at that time, when we celebrate our Mass, was in Roman Catholic. As a matter of fact, Tolkien would still, even though we were allowed to, when they got changed, that we could speak it in the home tongue, whatever. All right, for example, if you were Catholic now and you go to Poland, it's in Polish, not Latin. Tolkien refused to do that. He would still say the Mass when he heard it, and he would still reply in Latin.
He was very anti-Vatican
diehard. Yeah, he's a very, what you would call traditionalist when it comes to the Catholic faith, and he put that into his books. But you have to remember, the whole purpose of this is because Great Britain, England, Britain, whatever you want to call it, that area, don't have much lore. The lore they did have is pretty much Robin Hood and King Arthur, and he felt King Arthur got pretty much usurped by the French. Okay, so,
and that's also like, I mean, it's still history, but that's like, well, that's kind of medieval times history. A lot, if you look at a lot of folklore and stuff in other places, they got stuff from before the
world. Remember, in the beginning, he does it as a Catholic would with the Bible. Angels and everything. He's telling you the hierarchy, like El Lumitar. That's God. Okay. Then you have the head of the angels that came, if you want, whatever they call them. I know they have a different name, avatars, whatever. The ruler of the earth is Manwë. He is Michael, what we consider Michael. And then there's a whole list of higher up angels over there in Arda. And then there's lesser ones. all the wizards that came over were original angels. They were servants of the archangels. Sauron was a servant of 2 other ones before he hooked up with Melkor.
That is a really interesting find there, Baron.
You know,
Mhm.
there's a lot to Tolkien, man. I mean, what he managed to accomplish, and give it to the actors, because remember at the end of the movie, Hugo Morstein singing an elfish tongue, a song that was written in the book for Lord of the Rings. I couldn't read it. I couldn't sing it.
That's again though Return of the King. We'll
Yeah.
get to that when we get
Yeah.
there.
But he sings that even in Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship. He sings that even in the Two Towers. He
Well,
does
see, that's
sing
one
that
thing you're going to find that's in the book that you don't really have in the movie.
song.
There is constantly songs throughout the entire book, and you only get little snippets, just little snippets of it in the movies.
Yeah.
Because of when you had the people that were going around doing tales and such, they would sing it because it's easier to memorize a song than it is to memorize verse. Just talking. Prose.
You can almost say that in a book, Aragorn is almost like a bard in a lot of ways, because he does a lot of singing, like a bard would.
But yeah, Tolkien, being that he was interested in languages, another one too was Welsh. He was fascinated with Welsh because of all, just take a look how Welsh words are spelled. My God.
Yeah. Welsh is an interesting language.
So, real quick, hello to Pacific. Thanks for joining, man. So, getting back to the story, we of course fast forward through to the party. Everyone's having a good time. We get a peek at it in the conversation with Bilbo and Gandalf, but we get another one here of the Sackville Bagginses and how they hate Bilbo for living as long as they did and for not basically giving them their due. So I'm going to call on Michael for this one. Can you explain really quickly the beef between Bilbo and the Sackville Bagginses?
Well, I can't really speak on the book's behalf, but I'm going to give some dialogue from the Hobbit movies, where there's a slight dialogue that Bilbo has with Frodo, where he's saying how Lobelia Sackville Baggins stole his spoons, and also I think it's mainly because of the fact that they're just jealous of the fact that Bilbo has an estate like he does in Bag End with how wealthy he is. And I think that's also book material as well. Just the Sackville Baggins wanting to get Bag End.
I have read The Hobbit. I read that for school. Great book. I do remember at the end, like when Bilbo comes back, he comes back to basically people divvying up his stuff. Because they're like, he's gone. He hasn't come back at this point. He's clearly dead. We'll just take his stuff. And that's when he comes back. It's like, hey, no, I'm not dead, and I would like to keep my stuff. Thank you. And I think that's where a lot of it starts, because they were already divvying up stuff. They already have it in his mind, like, oh, this is ours, and here he comes. And also something like you said, and I'm pretty sure this is a only extended edition thing. I only watch the extended editions at this point.
Same.
But I think that line where they say, when there's knocking on the door, it's usually like, I'm not at home. And then he skips to like, I'm tired of these well-wishers or whatnot. And they skip that line in the middle where it's like Sackville Bagginses. They haven't.
That is an extended edition thing.
And I'm like, why would you take that out? That's like, first of all, it's really short, but second of all, it's just hilarious. Even if you don't know, it's like,
just remember, Bilbo is not also a Baggins. He is a Took. They're Frodo and what's his name, Mary Took are cousins. They're related.
Interesting.
So when he says, especially, I know in some parts in the movie, especially in The Hobbit, you hear Frodo's, what's his name, say, Boba say, I am a Baggins. Gandalf knows his family background. He goes, remember, you're also a Took, and Took are very adventurous. Baggins are not. They're not. They don't want to leave the Hobbit.
See, to be more correct, he is a Baggins, but a Baggins, his parent was married a Took. So basically, as it goes, there was strife within the family between him and the Sackville Bagginses, and knowing this with the Hobbit and all that the Tooks had this wanderlust, for lack of a better word, which inspired Bilbo to take off. Nobody knew he took off. He just disappeared one day. And then he comes back a year later as they're divvying everything out, the Sackville Baggins, and figuring that they're going to get their pound of flesh. But not only did he come back, but he came back richer. He had all this money, this gold, which helped, what would you say, fan the animosity between the two. And then when Frodo's parents died, he takes them in and takes them in, and basically that's his heir. That's his son. He adopted son now. So
right,
that doesn't help matters much either.
By the way, I'm dropping Pacific the links if he wants to join. So Bilbo, of course, pulls his vanishing act, and of course everyone is shocked. And he makes his way back home. Gandalf, of course, catches up to him, and this is, of course, where they have the big argument of, and where you really see just how much of a hold the ring had on Bilbo, because he didn't want to let it go. In fact, he was echoing the very same words that Gollum did. It's mine, my precious. And that, of course, causes the big blow up that Gandalf has on Bilbo after provoking him. Don't take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks. I'm not trying to rob you. Now, the whole atmosphere shift of the room getting darker and Gandalf seemingly getting larger in the room, is that book accurate?
He has a power of voice.
Yeah.
All the wizards have it.
Yeah.
The projection of a dark and thing, that's not accurate. But to project, I guess you had to have a visual thing to go with the voice for the movie, so I understand why it's there. But the wizards have the ability to, I guess you can say when they need to, they can project their voice to a higher authority. Voice of an angel. That's the best way to describe it. Voice of an angel.
Right. Because he's trying to snap Bilbo out. But everything else around that scene was for an audience of a film to see more than someone who'd be reading the literature. So it has more of an impact for a film. And really, honestly, because it's not in the book doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's a nice addition. I think it's a nice addition.
Yes, I agree.
And I wonder, this is kind of do with the books. It kind of seems like it's implied with Bilbo in that the ring is doing a lot of this without even noticing, or without Bilbo even noticing, in the sense of he says, "Oh yeah, I left it up on the mantle," and then later says "Oh wait, no, it's right here in my pocket," as if I don't think he would be lying. He wouldn't be lying if he's also the one who reveals the lie, but it's just in his brain, the ring. The ring is trying to say.
The ring corrupts, and even though hobbits seem to have the ability to resist it, that doesn't mean it still doesn't have the power over them. Right. So think of it like a kid that got caught with the hand in the cookie jar. Everything's all fine and dandy until the kid actually pulls the cookie out and takes a bite. When you walk in and you say, "Oh, you're eating a cookie," I found it this way. The power of the ring even though it can't corrupt them like they could normally do a human or an elf or a dwarf. We'll see. They're not even sure. They say sometimes dwarves can't get corrupted by it, but let's just say that they can. And anybody else would be like a kid with a caught with the cookie, cookie out of a cookie jar. And that's pretty much it. He can still, he see how he corrects himself. He says the line, "Oh, I don't know where it's at," and then, "Oh, here, it's in my pocket." Just like a kid would.
Right.
It's the power of the ring.
But I would still say that the ring is using them, because the ring at this time, because the ring does have sentience. The ring's main goal is to get back to Sauron. That's what it wants to do. It wants to get back to Gondor, which is why it betrayed that couple thousand years beforehand. Why it fell in the hands of Gollum, and when it figured that Gollum wasn't going to do the job, it landed in the hands of Bilbo, and now this was his chance. Of course, with Bilbo going to Rivendell, it's getting him closer to Mordor. So there's a lot of discussion about what the ring is and what Tolkien was trying to say what the ring is. And then when I try to sit back and say it's an analogy of the bomb or this. And one thing, Tolkien hated analogies. He hated analogies. But to have the perfect example of what the ring is sin. The ring is corruption. That's exactly what this is. It's a little round gold piece of ultimate sin. And its job only does one thing: to corrupt and to destroy, which is doing. And if it feels it can get Bilbo closer to Mordor with it, they'll then seek somebody else out, and then hopefully they will get it to where it belongs. Be it through the ring wraiths, be it through other agents. All across the board. So,
if you notice, the elf rings don't corrupt their users.
Mm-hmm.
Men are easy to corrupt. So every one of the kings of men, the 9 for men, corrupted every single one to turn them into a wraith at some point in time. The dwarves, there was a different story. They are kind of like hobbits. They have a little bit of resistance because they don't care. But see, that's another thing. Maybe they don't tell you what happens to the 7 rings of the dwarves. Most of them get destroyed by the dragons. The dragons, when they got a hold of a ring of power, they swallowed it. And if you know a dragon, internally they have, fire. What happens? It gets melted and destroyed. So that's what happens to most of the dwarf rings. But there's a period in time Sauron sends demands, especially to the dwarves. I want that ring of power back. He wants it back.
Right. And it's also hinted on for the dwarves that they're kind of soulless.
Yep.
Because they were actually created. They were created before the elves. And when it was threatened that they would be destroyed, there was begging and pleading, so they were put into a suspended animation. And then the elves came, and then the dwarves went into the world as kind of a proto creature.
The one god, the god who he's like the smithy god. He was the original person Sauron served when he came to Earth with the archangel, or whatever you want to call their being, avatar, whatever. He created the dwarves. He fashioned the dwarves, but then the other gods, or whatever you want to call them, angels, didn't like the idea. So to settle the argument, Manwë, the head angel, goes to Uru-Ilúvatar and says, "What are we going to do?" And he says, "I didn't create them, but I'll claim them. But they're the first beings walking on the earth that I'm going to wake up is elves.
Yeah, the elves.
They can come afterwards.
Yeah.
So then it's the men to get woken up. Then it's the dwarves. There's 11 dwarves. There's 11 dwarves that were created. So they were originally thought that the creator actually was going to, not the creator Uru, but the
You just have toes.
he was going to destroy them before Manwë and Uru told him, "No, we're going to put them to sleep and we'll accept them as children of Middle Earth."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I said the condensed version of it, but yeah,
Yeah.
they were they were there, and so it's kind of thought they're probably a little soulless, so the rings wouldn't work on that. The only thing that they was hinted at is that the rings only heighten their sense of greed for gold more than anything else.
and I just want to make a claim that I am no way associated with Bucky crafting, but that is something that I know that I say to somebody all the time about gingers.
Fair enough.
Mm.
So Bilbo, of course, is convinced to give up the ring, and he does, and he leaves, and then, of course, Gandalf is left pondering everything, and this is, of course, where we already established he really starts to get suspicious that the ring is the ring. Frodo, of course, picks it up off the ground, and this is where we get the keep it secret, keep it safe.
Right.
And that's, of course, where we get the scene where we mentioned earlier of Gandalf going to Minas Tirith to go into the archives and study up on everything he can find regarding the Ring of Power and the fall of Sauron. He comes back.
No, actually, to go back a little bit with Bilbo leaving, one thing that was left out of the film that was in the books, and I don't know why Peter Jackson didn't put it in the movie, is when Bilbo left Hobbiton to go to Rivendell, he was joined and escorted by 2 dwarves. So it was 3 of them that traveled to Rivendell instead of Bilbo by himself.
And since we're pretty much passing Bilbo's part, I mean, he'll be back, but not much. I was going to say, just agree with you. Like, Ian Holm does a great job here as Bilbo, and I do think. I mean, I'm not a. I know some people are fans of the Hobbit stuff. I only watched the first movie and didn't like it. But I do think like Martin Freeman is not as good of a cast, and I don't dislike him. I think he was good in that Sherlock show.
Yeah,
when he was Dr. Watson, but
yeah, he's a good actor.
He's a good actor. It's just he feels weird for this role. Maybe it's because I'm used to Ian Holm.
Yeah,
but it just seems like he doesn't fit how I would expect. You know, and it's almost like because he seems to get angry a lot, and not necessarily like. I mean, it's not like Bilbo doesn't get angry. It's just a different kind of angry. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I would say more flustered.
There's a way to analogize that is how people think of Mr. McGinnis as Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. There is a great difference, but there's also similarities. And I watched The Hobbits. I have the extended version on them as long as with the Lord of the Rings edition extended versions. I don't have any problem with The Hobbits, even though there's been changes and some extended. No actor is going to be the same. No, it's just impossible. And when you have a situation where an actor is too old, sometimes this was the next best thing. I did like to see the difference between the older and the newer, the replacement. That was no problem. Like I said, I mean, I think it happens with a lot of movies. You're used to an actor in a trilogy, and then when they go do another trilogy, and they're forced to recast a part, people still think, all right, let's just say they came out with a new Star Wars trilogy and it has Luke Skywalker. People will be mad that it's not Luke Skywalker, even though Mark Hamill can't play a 40-something anymore Luke Skywalker. And I'm an old person that likes Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. But I will tell you this, I wouldn't mind a new actor. The guy who played Bucky in what is it? Avengers?
Winter Soldier?
Yeah, he can play. He looks a lot like Mark Hamill, and he has the voice that's similar to Mark Hamill. Long as they stay true to the other actor, like Ewan McGregor did with McGinnis, I don't think there's a problem, but they have to add some of their own.
Well, to kind of go off of it too, that one Peter Jackson said when he filmed with Ian Holm, no two scenes were delivered the same way with Ian Holm, which he thought was great because he got a wide variety to pick from to use for the film. Second of all, you're dealing with two different eras of Bilbo, and you have the younger one, Martin Freeman, and that's just going out of the adventure, haven't been really outside of Hobbiton in a day in his life. And now he comes back, and now it's over 50 years later, after that big adventure, things change a person a little bit, viewpoints, how you act, how you look at things. So to see the two versions of Bilbo being slightly different, but still the same, is not uncalled for, especially after going on this big year-long journey, being involved with all the encounters that he had between the goblins, with the spiders, with the wood elves, the Battle of the Five Armies, Smaug, and then the trip back. It's it's a heck of a little journey for a little hobbit. And just like a soldier coming back from war, which basically, if you want to have an analogy that Tolkien was bringing forward to, was that the simple average person who went to war and now came back.
The journey of the journey takes a toll,
right?
And that one important thing that goes with that is in Lord of the Rings and all of them, you don't understand unless you read the books and understand time. A Hobbit, that takes a year.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings to Return of the King, start to finish, that takes over a year. I think they spend a couple months in Rivendell. Well, you don't see that in the movie because you can't see a couple months in the movie. But they actually stay in Rivendell a couple months. I think it's 2 months. Might be wrong. But, they stay there for a long period of time. That whole journey from the period where Frodo leaves Hobbiton to go to Rivendell and then agrees to take it all the way to destroy it, I think is that 2 or 3 years, Baron?
More than, well, if you want to go from the time that Bilbo leaves to the time you get to Rivendell, you're looking at about 18 years.
Yeah, it's a long period of time. It isn't like the movie. Like you see, like I said, I enjoy the movies and everything. You have to take into account the period of how much time is going on.
Right.
Yeah, and in Star Wars, New Hope to Empire, you're dealing with 4 or 5 years. Lord of the Rings, from Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship to the Two Towers, that's a long period of time there.
Yeah,
we're talking
a couple decades.
Yep. So you have to bear that in mind.
Real quick, Bucky brought up a good point. He says Tolkien and C.S. Lewis did a lot of the analogies for World War I, and not being the same when you come home from something like that, but everyone else is, or the places you thought you could protect were still destroyed.
Yes, exactly.
Peter Jackson did a good job with that, because when you see Frodo going into Mordor and everything, how fatigued, because the ring is literally wearing down on him. But he got, if you look in there, it's perfect. He got what they call the 1,000-yard stare, where a soldier that's on the battlefield so long, they're just numb to the world.
But we can deal with a lot of that more as we get to that one, because there's a lot to hit upon with what you're talking about there and other things around there with the film between the Two Towers and the
exactly. We haven't even left the Shire yet, and we're nearly 2 hours into this stream.
Right.
Tolkien's writing, I mean, even the movie wise, you can't do it in 5 minutes.
No,
I know.
No.
And if you miss something, and you, like I said, I tell people to inform them. If you don't know it and you don't inform it, you miss the point. And missing the point that how long Gandalf took to do the research on the ring,
it was years.
You have to if you don't understand that, it's taking a long period of time. Like I said, the movie wise, as a moviegoer, you see it and you would think, oh, it's a couple of days probably went by between him leaving Frodo, going to the White City, and then going all the way back. You, like I said, there's
Mhm.
you, and it's no fault of the director or anything. That's in any movie in a book. You
Right.
have a hard time differentiating the time. You know?
Well,
Right.
plus you got to have a sense of urgency with the movie more than a book, because you got a couple hours. You got to keep the average audience viewer enthralled in it.
Yep.
So like you said, he goes to the city to do the study. Frodo's basically living his life as is in Hobbiton, and no worse the wiser, or whatever, however the phrase goes. And really let me have those peaceful years.
Yeah, and then you get woken up one middle of the night with some crazy wizard busting through your door.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
So, getting back to the story, so
Mhm.
Gandalf returns
Yep.
from his research project, we'll call it,
Mhm.
as Frodo and Sam are getting home from a night drinking with Sam's gaffer. And we get a little bit more insight. We already got it from the party, but we get a little bit more insight into Sam having feelings for Rosie.
Yep, Rosie Cotton.
And I like the line, "Don't worry, Sam, Rosie knows an idiot when she sees one." And Sam's not quite sure how to take that.
I love
But-
it. She does?
Yeah. But then, of course, Frodo gets home. His house is completely dark, and Gandalf jump scares him from behind with the whole, and I'm going to really turn on the mic for this one, "Is it secret? Is it safe?"
I know. I think I could do it better. Is it secret? Is it safe?
There you go.
Yeah, that's true. You got the beard. It's much better.
Yeah, in the stringy hair, and he hasn't been washed a couple days. Yeah. Well, yeah.
But as we talked about, Gandalf has Frodo throw the ring into the fire and pull it out, and after a beat, we get the confirmation that yes, this is indeed the One Ring, because the black speech writing appears on the band, and
Right.
we get the translation of it. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. And
Mhm.
then, just like in the theatrical version, Gandalf goes into a brief history of how the ring was made, why it was made, with
Mhm.
Frodo. And it's also during this conversation that it's explained that Sauron was only destroyed physically in that battle. His spirit remained.
Mhm.
And since then, he had continuously been A, gathering strength, but B, looking for the ring in order to cover the lands in a second darkness.
Mhm.
And Frodo's first inclination is, okay, let's just hide the ring away. He can't find it here. No one knows it's here. And that's when, of course, Gandalf reveals someone does know it's here. His name's Gollum, and the enemy captured him.
Mhm.
And he basically snitched you guys out with saying Shire and Baggins. So that, of course, leads Frodo to try and get Gandalf to take the ring, and Gandalf vehemently refuses, saying, "I can't take it. I would use this ring from a desire to do good, but through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine."
Right.
And that has led, of course, to a bunch of people, especially people on YouTube that I have watched, and they've done a good job of it, speculating what that would look like. What would that power too great and terrible to imagine? Let's try to imagine it. I mean, basically, Gandalf would become the next almost Melkor, right?
And close. He'd be up there with Sauron.
Right.
He'll be up
I
there.
mean, if you want to take a look at it, again, it's looking at the fact that I want to do this to do good. And any dictator will tell you what they're doing for good. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it was the Soviet Union, National Socialist Germany, Cuba, even North Korea.
Yeah.
They think they're doing good. They want to do it for good. Now, of course, the road to hell is paved with what? Good intentions.
Exactly.
And this is exactly what the ring is. It's, you're going to go out there, you're going to try to do good, but the corruption comes in there, and then before you know it, comes the evil, the destruction, desolation, all the things that come along with it, the tyranny, and that's exactly what this ring is. That golden road.
This one thing that bothered me about the movie, they didn't include it. That's in the book. Before, when Gandalf is revealing about Gollum, what people don't know is that in the book, he sends Aragorn to go hunt down and capture Gollum.
Yep.
And he does. He takes him to Mirkwood, to the king, the elf king there, the same, what begins with the TH. Don't get me to say his name. He's in the Hobbit.
Durandawil.
Yes. And he's actually in prison there, and he's supposed to hold him until Gandalf can come there and question him.
Right.
But Gollum, being the sneaky little thing he is, manages to escape the elves. And no sooner than he leaves the Greenwood, the Ringwraiths capture him. And they take him. Now imagine this. He gets captured in Greenwood, which you call Mirkwood. They take him all the way to Minas Morgul. That's in Mordor, on the mountains of Mordor. That's halfway across the map. That's where they do the torturing. And that's where Sauron comes up with the plan, not the Witch King, Sauron. We're going to let him go, and we're going to follow Gollum. He's going to lead us to the ring.
Right. Because he's connected to it.
Yeah. So, and that part's missing. I don't think 2 minutes of that in a movie would have took too much time. It would have explained a lot more. Again, Gandalf, when he comes up with that line, how does Gandalf know that Gollum, anything about Gollum? The way he knows it is because he tracks it down with the history, but he sends Aragorn. But like I said, he wanted to question him. He didn't get to question him. Who gets to question him? The Witch King.
Right.
That's the one that tortures him. And then, like I said, it's a plan. We're going to let Gollum go, and he is going to find us the ring. So,
yeah, who better than the ranger to hunt him down?
And you have to remember, with all this, like I said, all this, there's different parties looking for the ring. You have Saruman, you have Sauron, you have Gandalf, and then everybody that's in power in all this, the steward of Gondor wants the ring. As soon as he finds out, that's why he sends Boromir. He doesn't send his younger son because he calls him the wizard pupil. He sends Boromir because he knows if Boromir can get the ring and bring it to him, he'll have the ring.
Right.
So, like I said, I don't mean to take us off topic, but that's very important. Like I said, some of these little bits and pieces play a part.
Of course. Bucky says, I was also looking for the ring. I got one on eBay, but it didn't have any powers. I also was looking for the ring too, and I found one in a Cracker Jack box.
I got the ring, and I had got the Lord of the Rings, the Risk game, and the Monopoly.
Yeah.
And in the Risk game, there was two.
Ooh.
Oh, fun.
So I have one for the game, I have one for my Monopoly Lord of the Rings, and I have that third mistake one that they actually gave away for free. So yeah.
Nice.
I am no for
why he is the way he is.
So ultimately they come to the conclusion that the ring cannot stay in the Shire, so Frodo has to take the ring out of the Shire. Now, at this point, it's worth mentioning, at this point, the objective is not yet to destroy the ring. It's just to get the ring away from the Shire.
Yeah.
And as far as Frodo's knows for now, his goal is Bree. And at
Well,
first he
Well,
you have to remember, there's a White Council.
Mhm.
And what happens with Gandalf when Radagast unknowingly got him trapped there and then gets him out, unknowingly gets him out. But the White Council's been dissolved. But
Mhm.
still, Elrond seems to be the one person that's taking over for Saruman in a way to guide everybody. So that's why it's important that they get the ring over to Rivendell, because they want to get it in Gandalf's mind. If I could keep it over there in Rivendell, I can figure out what to do.
Right.
and here also we have massive deviations from the book in the movie as well. One, we forget about the fifth Hobbit that joins along with Frodo, and that's Fatty Bolger.
I didn't know about it. I knew he was
and
referenced in the movie, but I didn't know
Yeah.
he was part of that. Wow.
Right. So actually, what happens is again, he does not take off like his uncle did, like
Mhm.
Bilbo did. He actually goes through the process of selling Bag's End, and he buys a place called Crick Hollow, and he's moving there. So basically, Sam, Frodo, and Fatty go on the way, and of course Merry and Pippin join along. You did not have the situation where the farmer was going after him. In fact, the farmer was someone who helped them, gave them the mushrooms, supplied them as the ring wraiths were chasing after him. But he eventually goes to the Crick Hollow, and then from there he encounters, who was not in the movie, good old. You might call him the Green Man of the saga, but that's Tom Bombadil, and rescues him from Old Man Willow. We also we do get the borrow rights, where they get get some weapons and such from the undead that's within the tomb, and then then they make it to Bree. But it's again it's a longer journey, and Fatty Bolger stays behind at Crick Hollow as kind of a subterfuge as the other four continue on.
Okay.
So that's just in a nutshell what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the movie, it's just Frodo and first off, it's just Frodo. Gandalf, of course, catches Sam eavesdropping and says, "Okay, you're going with him." And Gandalf, of course, splits off from the two, goes to see Saruman as Frodo and Sam keep going. And then we get Gandalf and Saruman meeting. Of course, no mention of Radagast.
Right.
And it's here that, of course, at first Saruman greets Gandalf as a friend, but we know by this point that he's already turned against the forces of good. He is in league with Sauron at this point.
Sauron
and his
of many
goal...
colors.
Wait, do we know that at this point? In the movie, at least?
Yes.
Yeah.
We know it. Okay, at this point, we don't. I'm just saying in hindsight, we know it now.
Yeah.
That this wasn't just a spur of the moment thing of, hey, you came over, let's join Sauron. No, he knew.
Right. And then another thing that was left out of the book was Saruman's no longer Saruman the White. He's Saruman the Multicolored.
Really?
Yes, he is. We all know there's 5 wizards. 2 share blue. Gandalf has a gray. Saruman is white, brown, and Radagast is brown. And originally, when the wizards came over, even though in Arda, before they were sent over, they had different names as angels back there in Arda. But Saruman originally didn't want Radagast, but one of the angels said you have to take him. That's the one that deals with nature. And so that was forced upon. And remember, there's a 6th person that comes over from Middle Earth, and that's Glorfindel. Okay? He comes along with them. Now, there's different times some people say, and they're still not sure because Tolkien changed his mind, the Blue Wizards came together with the other 3, or sometimes they proposed that the 2 Blue Wizards and Glorfindel came before him. I lean more towards all six came together.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too.
But when Saruman in a book, when he greets after the, like I said, in the book, Radagast finds Gandalf riding on the road, and he says, Saruman is looking for you. You need to go report to him. He's the head of the order.
Yep.
Now, when they came to Middle Earth, that wasn't the case.
No.
They were equals, right?
They were pretty much after when they landed, they were supposed to be more equals, even though the angels had set the order. Galadriel wanted Gandalf to be the head of the order of the wizards. Okay. Not only because of that, but because what Sauron didn't know, one of the elf lords that had the ring, the guy, the shipwright, the guy who built the ships, he gave his ring, the red ring of fire, to Gandalf.
Yep.
Galadriel, again, she wanted him to be Gandalf to be the head, but they end up making Saruman. So technically, it wasn't, oh, I'm white, I'm the highest. That originally wasn't the case. That was the case back in Arda before they left, but not when they landed on Middle Earth. But Gandalf took to see, I want to be more second. I can be doing things out there. And in some cases, one of the blue wizards is supposed to be number 2, not Gandalf. So in another person perspective, going by what Tolkien wrote, and again, he goes back and forth, Gandalf could be seen as number 3, not number 2.
And even then, Saruman still has resentment against Gandalf. One, because he has the ring and was gifted that ring. But this is something that festered up for 1,000 years that they've been on Middle Earth. So,
and don't forget when in the movie, which does a good part, I don't think it's in the book. Yeah, it might be in the book. I forget. It's been a while. When Sauron says to Gandalf, what do you want, the 5 of the staffs of the 5 wizards? He was trying to project what he had done and taken over, but he was wanting to project that onto Gandalf, making him feel that he was trying to take over. That's how warped he became. He wasn't that warped when he left. When he came from Arda, everybody was in sync on what their mission was. Okay. Saruman, you can't explain how he fell. He just, power corrupts people.
Right. And in a sense, the ring was corrupting them from a distance and working at them, because what best way to get rid of your opposition than have them fall apart from the top, cut off the head. And basically he's becoming now an agent for Sauron, trying to get the ring. But his intention is not to give the ring to Sauron. He wants it for himself.
He wants to be the power. And that's why you hear Gandalf tell him Sauron does not share power with nobody. His master was Melkor, and Melkor is not in the world no more. He ain't sharing power with anybody.
Right.
Period. So,
So this is, of course, as Saruman is revealing just how much of Sauron has come back. And of course, what the 9 are actively doing. And it's here that Gandalf puts 2 and 2 together. Saruman puts 2 and 2 together that one of the hobbits has the ring, because Gandalf reacts the way he does. And that causes the fight. Is the fight and how it played out book accurate, where they're throwing, where, for lack of a better expression, they're using the Force, but with their staves?
I would say the fight is accurate for a wizard fight, and his imprisonment on top of the thing. But the causes is, in the movie, it says because Gandalf wouldn't join him. I don't believe Saruman in the book wants Gandalf to join. He don't need the wizards.
No.
He don't need the other 4. In his mind, I'm going to be the absolute ruler. So I don't think in the book, if I'm correct, right, he does not say she wants Gandalf to join him.
No, not at all. He wants this information.
Yeah, he wants the information, and if he could eliminate Gandalf, so be it. And if he could contain Gandalf, so be it.
Right.
So
exactly. So I mean, he doesn't. want to. He just wants Gandalf out of the way, and uh, and and that's the big important thing. He wants to get his quest going on there.
And
And
like like I said, you don't know what happens to the Blue Wizards. And the
Mhm.
movie, and especially in The Hobbit, for Radagast, he has, and they got it right. He doesn't care about Radagast. Radagast is insignificant. Radagast is not on a power to be contend with. For
Right.
Sauron, it ain't even his belief that he believes he can even take Saruman on. Sauron, excuse me. Gandalf is Saruman's problem. Gandalf is his competition.
Mhm.
He's jealous of him, and he wants to get him out of the way.
right,
Okay. So while this is all going on, real quick, Bucky says it seems kind of average compared to other wizard fights. Okay, fair enough.
well, and that's on Peter Jackson's part, because Peter Jackson made it known that he absolutely hates wizard battles. He
Really?
knew he had to do one, but he hates wizard battles. And one of the
I
reasons
wonder what he thought of
why,
Harry Potter.
probably didn't like it much at all. And that's why that battle between Gandalf and Sauron was the way it was. He just didn't want, yeah, we got to do something about it, but I don't want it to be this big, well, like you said, Harry Potter type of thing. Or as other people have had, wizard battles previous. So that's how that particular scene came about.
Okay. So while this is, of course, going on, this is where Sam and Frodo bump into Merry and Pippin. They were raiding Farmer Maggot's crop. They get chased off the cliff. They find the mushrooms, and the first ring wraith catches up to them. Here is where I get kind of confused. Well, one of the things that confused me. So the ring wraith is, of course, sniffing around. He can't see the hobbits over, that little ledge. And Frodo immediately grabs the ring and seems to faint, like his eyes just close. What's going on there?
The ring is corrupting him, because if you notice, not only is he grasping the ring, but the ring is wanting to put it on his finger. If he puts on the finger, the ring wraith will know exactly where he is, and then the ring wraith can grab the ring and bring it back to Sauron. Again, remember, the ring wants to be discovered.
Yep. You have to remember, when he puts on the ring, and when you see the race, they have two forms. You see them in the real world, black and everything, but when they're in the spirit, let's call it the spiritual world for a better term, you see them white. Okay?
Yeah.
Frodo puts that ring on. They are more powerful in the spirit world than they are in the actual world, believe it or not. So if that ring wraith is sensing the ring, but they can sense the power, just like when you eventually watch The Hobbit, Smaug can tell he got a ring of power. Same thing here. But when he puts it on and he's in the spiritual world, it is now 10 times they're more powerful. So their senses are more powerful. So they definitely know where the ring's at.
Right.
Okay.
He can't be invisible to them in the spiritual world like they are in the physical world. And then you're more on their playing field. Even worse, the worst mistake he did with there was putting on the ring.
Right.
So
the ring, again, the ring is trying to work its game to get back home. And just on a side note too, this particular scene is almost a shot for shot redone of the one that's in the Bashki film.
Really?
Jackson made it known that there were elements in the Bashki film that he really liked, and he transferred over. This was one of those scenes.
Interesting.
And even South Park made fun of it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the ring, Bucky says it here. He was trying to fight the ring. The ring wants to be found.
Right.
Okay. But eventually, they get out of that mess because they throw some of the crops to distract the ring wraith, and they keep running. The ring wraiths keep chasing them, and they eventually make their way to Buckleberry Ferry, which they manage to escape the ring wraiths for that long, and that brings them to Bree.
Right.
You should tell them why and why the ring wraiths couldn't cross the river. Why is that?
Ring wraiths can't get wet.
The water is the one weakness. They can't. The physical form of crossing the water.
Think of baptism.
Yep. Just kind of like like
Okay.
holy water, kind of like that. They just water it for them. That's why when you see them on the movie, which I think they did a good job, when they take the ferry across, they knew, okay, we can't follow them that way, so they're going to go to the nearest ford or the nearest another ferry or bridge. They can cross. Their horses can cross the water, but for them to actually jump into the water to do it, like. You'll see later on when they cross the ford what happens. But they can cross the ford with a horse. But get the idea of it's high water and they cross the ford and they get wet. That's not happening. They can't do it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like a vampire can't cross running water.
Yeah, no,
right.
And immersion in water is destructive. Well, the water is seen as holy. It's so again, you're taking other pages out of that Roman Catholicism.
No.
Okay. See, I'll be honest, I kind of always thought that their real weakness was fire, but again, we'll get to that part when we get to it.
There's another reason, and I'll do it real quick. In Middle Earth, most of the angels, if you want to call them that, they no longer come over to Middle Earth. But the one angel of the sea, or God, if you want to call it, but I prefer to call them angels. That's the closest thing we can identify it with. Omno, he's in charge of the water. He still comes over to Middle Earth. Now, he may not reveal himself to anybody, but he does it a couple times in the previous books. That's why the ring wraiths are scared to go into the water, because they fear the angel of the water. So if they go into any form of a pond, a river, creek, lake, or anything like that, you're now in his domain. And that's one of the only angels from the land of the Undying Lands that still has a presence on Middle Earth.
Okay.
That's why they fear, another reason why they fear water.
So, while all of this is going on, Gandalf wakes up and he's on top of the Tower of Orthanc, and down below, Sauron is basically reaffirming his commitment to Sauron, and he decides to go full in on being evil. He tears down his tree garden in favor of basically turning to, and I'm going to be very specific with my wording here, he tears down nature, turning to the industry of war. That had to have been on purpose, that Tolkien put that in there. That Sauron basically no longer cared. In fact, I'm going to steal a line from Two Towers. Now he has a mind of metal and wheels. He no longer cares for growing things.
Tolkien was a very nature fellow. In fact, he even had a favorite tree he liked to sit under. He loved trees. He could not understand people's obsession with going to technology. His kids had electric train set. He could not fathom, why would they want something like that? He was a very simple man, not a simpleton, obviously, but a simple man. He was a man of the earth, and of course, he did see the instruments and machinery of war in the Great War, and that obviously affected him too for the rest of his life. So for him, one of the big horrors for him is to see some place that's so beautifully wooded like that be destroyed for machinery, and not just for machinery, but for machinery of war.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Tolkien's heart talking here.
Right. And of course, we see exactly what it is he's making later on. But again, we'll get to that when we get there. So by this point, the hobbits have reached Bree. Now, help me out with this real quick. Is or is not Bree still part of the Shire?
No.
Okay.
You have
Once
to
we
remember
really got
there's a man kingdom when the survivors of Numenor came over. Elendil went north. He found the king of Arnor. His two sons go south, and they found the kingdom of Gondor. Excuse me. Well, there's a war. You don't have them in none of these books, but they have a war. The Witch King pretty much destroys the Northern Kingdom, and the elves and what remains of the Dunedain, which was part of the Northern Kingdom, defeat the Witch King, but everything is Wild West now. There's no kingdom, no nothing. There's practically no law. Bree is the last remaining city, well, remains of a city, let's put it that way, exists, but there's no law there. It's whatever law it is, it's in that city, not outside. It's not part of the Hobbit. The Hobbit actually, used to be part of the Northern Kingdom, which later on you find out they get independence, but it's confusing. That's all I can tell you. But Bree is not. There's no kingdom, no city state, no nothing. Bree's just a city that you go to, you do your thing, but besides the city itself, there's no law outside there.
But yet Bree was a city of both man and hobbits.
Yep.
Because of the hobbit community there as well. So hobbits were not obviously if they're living there, they're not an unknown entity. But Bree was east enough from the Shire to be not part of it. So once you cross that river, really is when you got outside of the Shire, out of the hobbits sphere, you might say, of living. So
when the kingdom splits in three, one of the kings, I think it's Arnodine, where Bree and Hobbiton is located. The human population gradually decreases in the north, even during the wars and everything, to the point when it got destroyed. Well, previously, once it gets split in three, the population's already fallen. So he invites, and Tolkien took this from history, invites the hobbits to come move there because there's nobody living there. Similar to what the Romans did in the 4th century, inviting, we don't have enough manpower. Hey, you Franks, you want to come over? Yeah, we'll let you settle in Gaul. Go ahead and settle there. Similar to that. There's not enough people. You have an open space and you need the manpower. So, but again, like I said, the kingdom, even when the kingdom splits in three, the Witch King destroys everything. So right now, it's kind of like, think Wild West. The hobbits have a little control in their little spot. The men of Bree, even it has just the control of the city itself. But it's not. There's no alliance, no association with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's Eredor was the name of the area. Arnor was to the north of that.
Yeah.
And of course, then you have Rohan, and you have Gondor. Gondor, which has Minas Tirith, and of course Rohan, which of course has their town, and of course Helm's Deep, and Isengard, which is basically on that border.
Yep.
It was where you had on the southern end of the Misty Mountains where you have Saruman.
Yep.
So Saruman's actually further away from the Shire than he is from Minas Tirith. So travel that Gandalf is doing back and forth is a long trip.
That's why he gets the name Great Pilgrim, because, like I said, even in a movie, you don't realize how much distance and time it takes to travel to go from the Hobbiton to Bree. Takes a while. It takes days. It isn't like it's an overnight trip. It'll be the equivalent of you having to walk from where you're at in Virginia to New York City. It
Yeah.
can't be done in a couple. It ain't gonna. You're gonna need a couple days to do that type of traveling. And then
Oh, I'm
again,
sure.
when they travel to Rivendell, it takes a long period of time. Foot power,
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean,
because they were not taking the main roads. They were going through the
Well,
wilderness
even so, they
off the
didn't have horses. They weren't riding horses. They
Nope.
were walking. And
Mhm.
even if they were to take the main road, it would still take days, if not weeks, to go from the Hobbiton to Rivendell.
right.
It's-
And to give an other idea too, Hobbiton didn't have an inn.
mm-mm.
The Green Dragon was not in Hobbiton. It was a couple miles away.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, for the hobbits to go to an inn, you have to travel a couple miles and enjoy the night there, and then have a couple mile trip back on foot.
So, with that, like I said, the hobbits make their way to Bree, and they get checked in to the Prancing Pony, where Gandalf initially told Frodo he'd meet him, but of course Gandalf's not there because he's busy being trapped on Orthanc. So the four hobbits settle in, and we get some playful banter with Merry and Pippin. This, my friend, is a pint. And Frodo notices a pretty shady-looking fellow staring at him from the corner,
Mhm.
and he is, quote, one of them rangers. His right name I don't know, but round here, folks know him as Strider.
Mhm.
Now, I know this is a difference from the book, because what happens in the movie is Frodo, of course, is fighting with the ring again, and he overhears Merry mentioning his name, Frodo Baggins, when he's not supposed to be going by that name. He's supposed to be going by Underhill.
Mhm.
And Frodo tries to get Merry to shut up, but he trips. The ring flies out of his hand and lands on his finger. The book included a whole song and dance number. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Remember, you're at an inn.
yeah.
Mhm.
So there's singing, there's dancing, and people eating. Now you have to understand when he was talking, Baron was talking about like the one for the hobbits. They're in like Green Dragon, and the inn over in Bree. The inn in Bree is not only a place to eat and drink, but they have an upstairs where you can go sleep.
Mhm.
Over there with the hobbits at their inn, it's a place to drink and eat. But there's no place for strangers to go sleep because hobbits don't want strange people in the hobbits.
Nope.
Gandalf's one of the few that's
Mhm.
allowed to go into the hobbits, in the Hobbiton.
Yep.
It's not everything in Middle Earth, and Tolkien does a good job because, like in the world, sometimes people don't want strangers going through their place.
In
Right.
fact, they're
Yep.
being protected. They're
Yep.
being protected from people coming in there.
Yeah, so Hobbit.
Well, it's like they have that one monologue, or not monologue, but like when they're having discussion at the bar back in the Shire, they say, don't go, don't get in, don't go getting in trouble, and no trouble will come to you.
And that plays into what you brought up there, plays in what Tolkien was dealing with at the time, where, World War II is getting ready to break out, and people are, I'm not concerned about what's going over there in Europe. I'm over here in Australia, or I'm all over here in the North America or South America. What's going on over there doesn't concern me.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's the dialogue, because what you find out, just like in real life, what goes on there is eventually going to come over here. And the same thing
Exactly.
happens. What happens in one place, if Gondor is fighting Sauron on their own, they're going to get wiped out. Okay? And
Mhm.
so they don't have a choice. But if you're the hobbits, you can say to yourself, well, we're in this nice little place and no one cares about. Gondor is down there. It's none of our concern.
Right.
Well, they find out it is their concern because Sauron isn't trying just to take over Gondor. He wants to be the ruler of Middle Earth.
Mhm.
So they get it eventually. But the people
Exactly.
still back home, they don't get that, And that was the mindset at the time Tolkien was writing, because there was a lot of people, stay neutral, don't get involved in World War II.
Mhm.
So he a nice way puts stuff in the real world into his world. Just to give people, you have to remember, if a fire's happened in your house and you have a next door neighbor, you don't want their house to catch on fire because your house. So you're going to be somebody to go run out of your house, tell your neighbor, hey, there's a fire in my house. You need to probably come out and let's help save your house. Might not be able to save mine, but I'm going to help to save yours.
Yep.
Right.
It's this type of attitude. And that's what Tolkien is trying to project to people.
So with that,
sorry if I distracted.
no, it's fine.
Nothing new with you.
So with that, then, by the way, and hello to Alan Copeland. Thanks for joining.
Hello.
Baron, you need to head out.
Yeah, I need to take off here. Fun talk. You might have to do 2 parts on this.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Maybe even some of these straight because it's big.
This is even the movies.
They're big.
There's a lot in there. Now throwing in the book along with it. There's a lot of lore in here.
And especially if you're doing movies, the extended versions, them parts are very important.
My extended version set has 2 discs for them. Well, it's more than that because there's all the extra stuff, but the movie itself is 2 discs. So
Same. So I tell you what, let's do this. Let's go ahead and cap it here.
Okay.
So to the Lord and Savior of Pop Talk, Phil, do you know if Mike's doing anything on Pop Talk tomorrow?
Not that I know. Baron will know more.
Well, I don't think he's doing anything, but I think Cash Monet, if he's feeling better and all that, he wants to do a gaming. I think he wants to do Among Us tomorrow.
Okay.
He's alive.
I don't know.
Do you know what time that might be?
8:30 maybe my time, Central Standard Time.
8:30.
Yeah, usually 6:30 his time, I think. Might
so that would be 9:30 for us. Okay.
Yeah.
How about Saturday? How about Saturday evening? What do you think?
I hope that we have our Babylon 5 stream.
Yep. Babylon 5.
Yep.
All right.
Monday?
Yeah, we could do Monday.
I don't know who I have to talk to, but on behalf of me and Whoopa, I want to put a complaint in. Alan Copeland, don't ever come into a chat with the Cubs on there. We don't appreciate people who have Ivy in the outfield. That weed has to come out.
Hold on. I think I still got it. I do still got it. There it is.
Oh no.
There it is.
Look what we've gotten ourselves into, Phil.
Yeah, you open your mouth up, Phil.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
I don't see whatever you guys
hold on a second. Tell you what, let me do this real quick. You saw it that time, didn't you?
Need a weed eater. Take a weed eater to that or something.
Yeah. Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
No, that's incorrect. When you're the king and legend of Pop Talk,
because I am angry, and I'm angry with this gentleman right here because he tricked me into watching a terrible movie.
I tried to warn you. I tried to help you.
We told you.
You went into that willingly. And what happened to that young person there? Look how he had nice short hair. He looked,
he's right here.
Hey,
no. This is sloppy Paul.
Did you when you kicked everyone out and was looking at the Ivy? I think I heard the screams of all the outfielders that were stuck in there.
Yeah, and you're wearing that horrible Bucky's hat that won't let poor truckers stay there anymore.
Hey, don't insult Bucky.
Hey,
don't insult Bucky in the chat. That's
Bucky's is
nice.
awesome.
I don't even know. I didn't even know what Bucky's was until about a year ago. We don't have Bucky's here.
Yeah, we don't have them here either.
Yet.
Good.
We're getting one near my area though.
And by the way, may I ask that I'm very proud of you about the fluffiness of your pillows. Look how fluffy they look. So
I don't know what you're talking about. You don't see any pillows.
But the hat being thrown on the nightstand, that's not a good thing.
Gentlemen in chat, thank you so much for having us here. And I'll be there. I'll be here with Bills on Monday. How's that sound?
Sounds good. So we're gonna go ahead and cut it here, guys. So we're gonna say Monday at the same time, 8 o'clock, and we will get as far into Fellowship as we possibly can.
Yep.
But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to Baron Orman Tags Fandom Legacy and Pop Talk because they stream the same. Subscribe to Release McCracken. I believe Whoopa has a channel also. Subscribe to him. And just remember, everyone, the Force is family. See you guys later. I know, I remember too. See you guys.